Good evening and welcome to Your Idaho, where we discuss issues facing our state and its citizens. This program is brought to you by the GemStatePatriot.com, an Idaho-based electronic newsletter. I'm Bob Neugebauer, publisher of the Gem State Patriot, and our special guest for this evening is Tony Senesco. And a lot of people know Tony here, especially most of the gun-toting people. He's quite a Second Amendment rights person. Tony, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I moved here 5 years ago. Actually, came to Idaho 5 years ago. But prior to that, early in my life, I was a swift boat veteran. I spent 4 years in the Navy and then extended my service for a year to go on to swift boats in Vietnam. After that, the LAPD drafted me. And I spent a couple of years there before realizing that $750 a month wasn't going to pay the rent. From there, I went to college and then met my precious wife, Valerie, who I've been married to for 43 years, and then ran for city council in 1990, was elected in a city of 45,000 people.
What city was that?
That was in Poway, California.
Okay.
That's in San Diego County. During that time, I was also Santa Claus to the poor for 13 years. The post office gave me all of the letters to Santa Claus, and I got the ones from the poor kids, so we handled them. After that, I ran for mayor against the incumbent and lost. And then my son asked me to go into business with him in Washington, D.C. Went back there, and we started Washington, D.C. Private Investigations. In 2009, I turned that over to him. I discovered that Idaho was the best place in the world to live. I was invited to come out here and take a vacation. And once I came to this beautiful state, after living in Washington, D.C. For almost 15 years, I realized that this was heaven, especially Second Amendment heaven, compared to what was happening in D.C., where it was actually a felony to own a gun. And when I arrived here in Idaho and found out that you could actually wear a gun on your hip without even having a license, I just was amazed. So I started looking for Idaho gun organizations and couldn't find one. So I started Idaho Carry, open and concealed. We are now up to about 2,500 members statewide.
That's pretty significant.
Oh, you know, they're coming in by the droves now. We're getting about 100 new members every 2 weeks for whatever reason.
Wow.
They're just coming aboard. I think it's probably what's happening in Washington, D.C. that's driving people to look towards Second Amendment issues and how to protect themselves. But that's what I started back then, and it's going strong. I'm really enjoying my time.
So you started kind of the same way I did out here in Idaho, moving out from New York like I did, and found my guns, and all of a sudden I had a permit. I couldn't get one back there.
Well, you know, when you come to a place like this and realize the freedoms that you didn't have in New York or in California,
right.
This is the place. As a matter of fact, I'm finding that most of the Californians, I thought they were liberals that were coming here. Most of the Californians that I'm talking to are conservatives.
That's right.
That are moving here. They're trying to escape what has happened there, where they're destroying that state. So, but then once I got back here, and got Second Amendment or got Idaho Carry Open and Concealed started. I started volunteering over at the men's prison. I do that for a couple of hours every week, and got to meet a lot of men. Got a lot of stories, but I'll talk about that in a while.
Well, what made you decide to run for the Senate here, especially in the district you're running in? I hear a Republican hasn't won there since there were 20 people in that whole district.
There has never been a Republican elected in 19. And you know, what encouraged me to do it was an incident last year when I was testifying for the first time down at the Senate on the health care issue. I walked from the House on the east side, the House offices, to the Senate offices on the west side. And right between those offices was this office filled with men and women with little green badges. And I said, who are those people? And they said, they're lobbyists. Well, what are they doing here? Well, they lease that office space. Well, I was amazed. I actually was shocked. I was insulted, actually, that lobbyists would lease a space in Idaho's capital. I went up to the Secretary of State's office and said, could I get a list of all of the lobbyists that are here in this building? And they said, you have to go down and get that from the legislative advisor's office. I said, where is that located?
Wait, what's a legislative advisor?
That's what I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
I had no idea what a legislative advisor was until I said, where is the legislative advisor's office? And she said, well, it's located in the vault down on the garden level. And I said, you mean where the lobbyists are? And she said, yes, they're the legislative advisors. And that's where you have to get the list. And it's in a little green book. So I went down to the vault and said, I'd like to purchase your little green book of all of your lobbyists. And she handed me this book that said, Idaho Legislative Advisors.
I see.
And in this book are 176 lobbyists.
Wow. That's almost as many we have legislators.
Well, let me tell you what. When you realize, and actually when you're there in the hallways, when the legislature is in session, and you walk from one end to the other, you see all of these men and women with these little green badges cornering legislators as they come out of their offices. They totally monopolize that entire floor. Legislators can't say, no, I can't see you today, because they know as an eventuality they're going to have to either come out of their office or come out of a hearing, and they get captured in the hallway. There's a gauntlet that our legislators have to run, and that shouldn't happen.
Is there any other state legislature that you know, or any other capital that has an actual office for lobbyists?
Well, you know, I called Montana and asked them, and they laughed at me. I called Washington, D.C., and I said, I don't remember ever seeing any lobbyist offices in the Capitol, and they laughed and said, no, we don't have, do you have something like that in Idaho? And I said, yes, and they laughed. I called Washington State, and they said, well, we used to have lobbyists in our capital, but they're no longer there. They're moved out to a separate building. But down in Utah, they have them, I think it's in their basement, they've got an office there, and they're not called legislative advisors. When I said that they were called legislative advisors here, they said, really? You must be joking. And I said, no, not only are they occupying this space, they are going on television. They went on Idaho Public Television here this last month. They were being interviewed and talked about how important they were to the legislature, because there are too many bills that come before the legislature for our legislators to be able to read and understand them all. So they said, we actually do that for them. We research these the legislation that comes through. Now, let me tell you this.
I presume that's why we had the health care bill got through, because they helped the legislators understand how good it was going to be for us.
No, actually, I think they just purchased 14 legislators.
I see. Okay.
Am I wrong?
You know, I always say follow the money. You never know.
You'll follow the money. But, you know, last year they had 839 proposed pieces of legislation. 542 were actually introduced, 66 resolutions, and 357 bills passed. Now, how in 3 months can 105 legislators actually read, understand, and research all of those? So that's where these lobbyists, these legislative advisors come in. They say, we're actually the experts on this. We research each issue, and then we report back to the legislature. And we tell them what our interpretation is of this proposed legislation. Of course, we don't have any citizen legislators who are attempting to influence it. Well, actually, they do. If they make an appointment in between the times that the legislators have trapped these people in the garden level of the Capitol, we might be able to get some citizen input. But for the most part, 1,000 times more, they are getting legislative advisors' input.
Well, I found if you don't make an appointment to see a legislator at a particular time, there is a very slim chance that you're going to get to see him at all that day.
Yeah, because even if they make an appointment, quite often it's not kept.
Right.
Or it's been delayed, or till the next day. That doesn't happen most of the time with lobbyists, because they've got them in the hallway.
Sure.
They get to talk to them on their way to the next meeting. But the fact that, that we are leasing space to the Legislative Advisor's Office is an embarrassment, I think, to Idahoans. I walk to Democrat households, and I'm a Republican. I go to Democrat households, and they can't believe it. They almost come out with, I had a fellow run up the street to continue the conversation with me because he could not believe what I was telling him.
How long has that office been there that's been for the lobbyists?
Well, you know, the one in the, on the garden level has been there, I think, since the renovation. Now, the Capitol, the state of Idaho, renovated the entirety of the Capitol.
Remember that.
And they took what was the bank vault and renovated it at state expense and made it the legislative advisor's room.
Maybe they plan on locking the lobbyists in there someday and throwing the key away.
Well, I know that has been the recommendation, that the vault door would just be closed and let them dig out and go out of a wall. But I don't believe that they should be there. Anyway, I haven't found one person, and I've been collecting signatures now because I'm having a petition. I carry a petition with me that citizens are signing that would evict these people. Now, when I started my campaign, when I announced my campaign a couple of weeks ago, I did it in the Capitol, and I did it in front of this door that goes into their offices.
That's when you put this on a door. Did everybody see that? That's the infamous eviction notice.
This eviction notice, and may I read it?
Sure.
Okay. It says, eviction notice from the citizens of Idaho to all corporate lobbyists, AKA legislative advisors, who lease space in the People's House. We, the citizens of Idaho, demand that these leased office spaces be vacated and returned to us, the citizens of this great state, by the first day of the next legislative session, signed, We the People. So, now, that eviction notice has since been removed from the door. I went back down there.
I'm sure.
But you know, it is an embarrassment to all of Idaho to see this happening. And
how did they actually come about this room? Was there a transition? Was there somebody that made a decision? Was it the legislators? Was it the governor?
No one knows. I spoke to.
No one knows.
No one knows. They said that prior to the renovation in 2006, they actually had offices on the 4th floor of the Capitol, but that when they renovated the garden level, they decided to move the legislative advisors onto the same level with them, so they didn't have to go so far to get information.
Really interesting. Well, what do you think the chances are of actually getting them thrown out of there?
You know, I am going to collect thousands of signatures, and I'm going to submit those to the leaders in the Senate and to the governor's office. And I am hoping that will get them to respond to the people. If that doesn't happen, then I'll start an initiative. I will go ahead and start collecting signatures to put it on the ballot, because they need to be out of this building. We need to put the legislators in a place where they're not attacked moment by moment by lobbyists because they have a space, an office right next to theirs. So,
well, see, I wouldn't understand why the legislators would want the lobbyists right there with them. You know, it doesn't make sense if they're going to be bothered by them all the time.
Well, except for the fact that if the legislators really do not have the time to research these issues, and really do depend upon these lobbyists to give them information, then we've got a problem. And that's why one of my recommendations, one of my campaign issues, is that once we kick them out of the Capitol, the corporate lobbyists. Now, I'm not talking about kicking the citizen lobbyists out or the citizen lobbyist groups. I'm just talking about the corporate lobbyists.
That's right.
And I'm not saying that they needed to be kicked out and they don't have access. I'm saying everyone should have access to them. I'm suggesting that we turn those offices into conference rooms, because right now we've got 70 House representatives in there that have 3 conference rooms. They all have they have 70 cubicles that you can hear people whispering from one side to the
I've
other.
been in there.
So they really have no way to communicate privately with people. So we should turn those rooms in the center that the legislative analysts or advisors have and use those for conference rooms.
So I presume that you're not going to be taking any money from lobbyists, or
No.
they're not going to be giving you any anyway.
No, actually, that's my third issue that I'm running, and I'm not going to take a dime from lobbyists. I'm encouraging anyone who's running for office. There is absolutely no reason in House and Senate races for us to take money. We've only got about 18,000 homes in our district.
Right.
We should be able to get around, and the representatives have half that. So we should be able to get around to most of those homes and burn shoe leather instead of lobbyist money and meet the people that we're going to represent. This is what I did in actually 1980 when Congressman Duncan Hunter ran. He ran against Lionel Van Deerlin, where there was only 33% Republican in his district. But he walked. I was his first campaigner, and we actually ran from door to door, just meeting people. That's what this country, I think, is founded upon, is communication between the legislators or the candidates and the voter. We need to be able to get face to face with them and say, this is what I'm going to do for you, this is what I'm going to accomplish, and this is one of my issues, is that I think there should be self-imposed term limits. I don't think a person should run for office unless they've got a measurable agenda, that at the end of 2 years, they can say, I'm going to have accomplished or at least make some headway in accomplishing these goals. That's not happening. You're getting people that are running for office and they're going to go in there and camp out on their parties, whether it's Democrat or Republican, on their party's issues, and they're not introducing anything at all to make life better for the citizens or the businesses.
Well, I totally agree with you, and I've seen that happen. This happened in the last session where we had a grocery elimination of the grocery tax proposed and 30 co-sponsors, but the House Speaker would not allow it to come to a vote. Now, this was a very important issue for the poor and the low income, but they don't seem to care. It's a game of politics for them, and I'd really like to see that go away.
You know, it's not going to go away until the average voter requires, and that's why what I'm hoping will come from my campaign, because I'm hoping that I will be able to walk to more homes than any legislator has ever walked to, met more voters. I'm hoping to set an example for other legislators, and that the people will hear about this race and say, this is what I want from the person who's running in my district. I want to see their face. I want to hear what they're going to do in the next 2 years. And if they don't have an agenda that extends beyond that, don't run for another 2 years. But to just come in and camp out in that office because no one else is going to run against you, there's no reason for that. Idaho is always going to remain stagnant. We've been stagnant for 7 years in our economy.
Oh, no question. I've got the numbers to prove that. Prior 7 years, from 99 through 2006, we had an 18.7% increase in GDP. From 2007 to 2013, because we don't have 2014 numbers, it was less than 6% in the same time period. So you don't have to tell me we are flatter than a sidewalk.
You know, and again, it can be changed. It can be changed if, you know, the voter is as responsible as the legislators who are camped out in their seats, the good old boys.
Don't you find a lot of complacency when you talk to some of these voters?
You know, I find complacency because they're depressed over the fact that nothing is happening in our capital.
I can understand that.
And they don't believe that their vote is going to do anything. I think probably it's because we don't have a charismatic leader, someone who can give a vision to the people. And I think really that's what Idaho is waiting for, is someone who will actually say, this is what we're going to do over the next 2 years. I want to sit down with all of you. This is the direction that we're going to go, and we're going to achieve this by the end of my term. And then put out a list of measurable goals. And, you know, that's not happening.
Yeah, I see that we're looking for some change here. People are very complacent, so I'm not sure we're going to get it. I'm hoping and praying we get it. It's just going to, we're going to have to see the way the ball bounces here. You know, when you look at even our governor, Butch Otter, who this morning in the papers, basically they said he does not want to debate his opponent, Senator Fulcher. That tells me that he is either afraid to debate him or he thinks it could cause him some harm to debate him.
I think it's probably a combination of the both.
But don't you think the people are entitled to hear what you or what any other legislator has to say if you're running for office?
You know, the people are entitled to hear and must hear from every single person who's running for office what their agenda is. And we don't have an agenda, a measurable agenda that's coming out of most of the legislators in this state that are running for office. We have a few good ones in there. I just hope that they will set an example also. But the fact that we had so much that needed to come forward and to be voted on and wasn't.
Right.
The people in that leadership's district should vote them out.
I'd like to get to something else, something that you've been talking about. I know you've been busy down at the prison, and you've been working with the inmates down there. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what your goal is to do with this?
You know, it's a heartbreaking situation. I've got a lot of guys in there who have been in there more than once. And I ask them what their greatest fear is when they're getting out. And a lot of the guys that are in my classes are going to be getting out in the next year or so. Their greatest fear is being put in halfway houses that are supposed to be clean and sober. They're clean and sober homes that are not clean and sober, that are rife with crime and drugs and alcohol. And what ends up happening, and these guys end up going back into prison. It becomes these not safe and sober homes are becoming a revolving door, and it's costing Idaho a lot of money.
Aren't these state-run homes? I mean,
No,
don't we
they're
pay
not.
for those,
No,
or are they
no,
individual?
they're individual. These are individuals who have invested.
Okay.
And many of them are for profit. Many
Right.
of them are not for profit, and there are some that have recidivism rates that are as low as 2%. And that's the direction that they need to go, because the second thing, when I asked these prisoners, what needs to happen in your life when you get out of here that would keep you from coming back into prison? And they said, we need people to mentor us. We need ex-cons who have been successful to come alongside and show us how they did it. Because some of us have been here too long to really know how to connect on the outside. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, is trying to connect these guys with mentors. I'm trying to find ex-cons who are willing to come up alongside. I'm talking to probation and parole. I'm talking to the successful programs that are going on in this state where there's a 2%. When you've got a safe and sober home that is only got a 2% recidivism rate, that's worth millions of dollars to the state of Idaho, to the taxpayers.
Sure.
When we've got successful programs that are keeping men out of prison, then let's invest in those programs. Let's move more homes in that direction instead of running for profit homes where there's a lot of drugs and alcohol and a revolving door back into prison where we're paying for it again. But we've got another situation. When these prisoners leave, they have got so many fees that they have to pay. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars in drug tests, and they have to pay their probation officer's fee for the month. They have so many fees that they find that it's easier just to go back into prison.
Kind of like flying, you got to pay for a little bit of everything.
You got to pay in order to get out of there. I'm saying, when they first get out for the first year or two, give them time to get acclimated, to get a job. At that point, then start giving them a bill to pay for everything that was passed. But until that, for some reason, if they fall down and they don't make their payments and they fall behind, all of a sudden they're back in prison.
Well, they lose their incentive. They're working for basically the government.
Yes.
And that's not a good thing. You've got to give somebody a break along the way.
And there are some good guys in this prison, and there are some bad guys. There are some guys in there that are just going to go back to prison.
Right.
But more of the people that I talk to are willing to get out and do what is necessary to become part of the community, to be successful in the community and to contribute to this country and to our city and state. So, why not take advantage of that?
Well, we see what's happened to our prisons when they were under free enterprise rule. That
Yes.
didn't work very well.
No.
And I presume they're still investigating that.
Right.
Do the prisoners have anything to say about that?
I don't ask them about that at all.
Okay.
My entire goal when I'm in the prison system is to encourage these men, to bring them to Christ, to bring a little bit of joy in a very bad situation, to teach them how to get along with one another and set them on a course, a successful course to get out of prison and stay out of prison. That's what I'm hoping to do. And now my wife and I, Valerie, my precious wife of 43 years, is going to be working with me at the Juvenile Corrections Facility.
Oh, that's terrific.
Oh, yeah, and I want to tell you what, because when I found out from a lot of the guys in the prison that they wouldn't be in prison if they had been mentored when they got out of juvenile hall, if they had been taken and guided correctly.
Somebody paid attention to them.
Now, there are some that are being paid attention to, but many of them are being dumped.
Just one quick question. You talk about the two MRAPs. You submitted the public information request form to the police department, Boise Police Department. Have you heard anything back on that?
I've not heard anything well, no, I did. I received, I apologize. Last night I got a letter from the police department, the Boise Police Department, saying that my request, because of the number of documents I requested, it's going to take them a much longer time to gather all of these. But the fact is that they are going to respond, which
Right.
I'm looking forward to. But, we should not have MRAPs on Idaho City streets, paraded on Idaho City streets. It desensitizes the people here. We are a civilized society. Why would we have military vehicles in Idaho?
Well, I often wonder that, and again, that's the militarization of our police departments, which has been going on since we've had these two wars. All this equipment is available.
And we need to put them in the barn, and when there's a bomb threat, then pull it out for that. But don't put it on the street in a parade and say, this is part of America now. Those are not America. Those are Afghanistan. Those are Iraq. They are for uncivilized societies, and we are a civilized society in the United States. We don't need them here.
Well, I don't think we need them. There's been an awful lot of people that are complaining about seeing them around. We're going to have to cut this off tonight. I want to thank everybody, especially the technicians and the people from TVC TV for having us here to get this information out to you. And we hope to see you very soon. Have a great evening.